What do you do when the company you built from nothing starts feeling like a stranger to you? That question had been sitting heavy on Yarden Ames's mind for weeks. 15 years ago, he started his shipping company with a single rented truck and a few contracts he hustled for. Now, it was a full-scale operation with 15 warehouses across 3 states, over 300 employees, and a reputation for speed and reliability. Or at least, it used to have that reputation. Recently, complaints had been slipping through the cracks: missed deliveries, damaged goods, slow response times. Yarden had always prided himself on knowing his people, but expansion changed that. District managers filtered information, and his time was swallowed by board meetings and investors. He hadn't stepped foot in one of his warehouses in nearly a year. That gnawed at him. So, without telling anyone but his assistant, he made a plan. He picked one of the warehouses, Warehouse 7 in Columbus, Ohio, because it had the highest turnover rate and the most delivery delays. He'd never met the crew there, and no one there had ever seen him in person. Only his name was known. Perfect. He grew out a beard, dyed his hair darker, added some weight with layered clothing, and changed his posture slightly. With a fake name, Dennis, a fabricated backstory as a former factory worker looking for a fresh start, and steel-toed boots, he walked into Warehouse 7 for his first shift as a new trainee. The warehouse was buzzing with the sharp sounds of forklifts, the echo of pallets dropping, and the occasional blare of a walkie. It was big, gray, and cold, both in temperature and vibe. "Dennis, right?" a woman asked, stepping toward him. She had curly brown hair tied up under a cap and wore a reflective vest over her hoodie. "I'm Ren Carter. I'll show you around. Hope you're not afraid of hard work." "Not at all," Yarden said, shaking her hand. Ren didn't waste time. She walked briskly through rows of stacked boxes and showed him the basics: scanning inventory, wrapping pallets, and loading docks. She was patient but firm, clearly used to picking up others' slack. "People come and go here," she said. "No one stays unless they really need the money." Yarden noticed the team was small, barely enough to keep things running. "We're short-staffed," he asked casually. Ren sighed. "Yeah, 2 quit last week. One took a better job, the other just stopped showing up. Management said they're hiring, but we've been waiting, so we all just work double." A loud bang echoed across the warehouse as a forklift stopped suddenly. A tall man wearing a black hoodie jumped out, slapping the side of the machine. "Damn brakes again," he muttered. Ren called out, "You good, Colby?" "Yeah, just this death trap again," he shouted back. "I'll log it." "That's Colby, forklift op. He's been here longer than anyone," Ren said. "Quiet guy, but solid, keeps to himself." Yarden nodded and kept moving. He noticed something else. 2 workers glanced over their shoulders when supervisors walked past. The tension was subtle but there, especially when a short, stocky man with a clipboard came by. "Let's go, people," the man barked. Faster pace, we're 30 pallets behind. Ren tensed. "That's Troy. He's our manager. He thinks yelling is leadership." Later that afternoon, Yarden was on break outside, sipping from a vending machine coffee when Colby sat beside him. "You're the new guy," Colby said. "Yeah, Dennis." Colby offered a nod. "Watch yourself. This place eats people up." "You look like you've seen worse, though." Yarden chuckled. "Something like that." They sat in silence for a bit, then Colby stood up. "Back to it." The day ended with sore arms and a stiff back. Yarden had worked hard, but what stuck with him more was the way people moved, fast, tired, and unnoticed. No one smiled. No one felt safe. As he left, he heard yelling from inside. He paused near the loading dock. "You're short again, Wyatt," Troy shouted. "That's the 3rd time this week. You don't get to screw up just because your kid's sick." "I didn't mean to, I swear. I stayed late to make it up yesterday," a younger voice said. My paycheck was short and I couldn't cover my car note." "Not my problem," Troy snapped. "You want sympathy, call your mom or quit." "I've got 10 apps on my desk." Yarden clenched his jaw. He didn't know who Wyatt was, but that wasn't leadership. Before he drove off, he saw something strange. Colby walking out the back door, glancing around, then slipping Wyatt a folded envelope. Wyatt looked confused, opened it, and froze. His face crumpled. He tried to hand it back, but Colby just shook his head and walked away. Yarden stayed in his car, stunned. He didn't know what was in that envelope, but he had a feeling. and now he had a reason to stay longer. The next morning, Yarden arrived 20 minutes early. The sky was still a dull blue-gray, and the warehouse lights flickered to life one by one. He sat on a concrete barrier outside, watching workers trickle in. Most didn't say much. A few gave each other short nods. Some looked half asleep, others just worn down. Colby pulled in driving an old Chevy with a cracked windshield and parked in the far corner of the lot. He got out with a thermos in one hand and a canvas duffel in the other. He noticed Yarden and gave a short nod, then walked in without a word. Inside, the floor was louder than yesterday. A shipment was late and pallets were stacked in the wrong sequence. Wren was already pacing between aisles with a scanner in one hand and a clipboard in the other. She didn't look up as she called out, "Dennis, you're on Zone 5 today, pallets C through K. If anything's crushed or mislabeled, flag it. Don't wait." Yarden grabbed gloves and headed to the aisle. The air smelled like cardboard and motor oil. As he worked, he saw Wyatt at the far end, lifting boxes onto a conveyor. The kid looked no older than 22, wiry build, moving fast but awkwardly. Every few minutes he'd wince and rub his shoulder. Yarden approached casually. "Need a hand?" he asked. Wyatt hesitated, then gave a small shrug. "I'm good, just behind. You've been here long, 4 months. Still learning the rhythm, I guess." He didn't sound convinced. A voice called from up high. "Hey, Wyatt, that's not the right line." They both looked up. A man in a red cap stood on the mezzanine level, clipboard in hand. His tone wasn't angry, but it was sharp. "Sorry," Wyatt called back. "I'll reroute it." Yarden turned to him. "That guy your lead, Greg, he's the floor coordinator, different from Troy. Greg's more hands off. He watches and writes stuff down." As Wyatt tried to correct the boxes, he dropped one. It wasn't heavy, but when it hit the floor, he flinched hard and grabbed his shoulder again. "You all right?" Wyatt gave a quick nod, but his hand didn't leave the joint. "Yeah, just pulled something last week. Don't want to report it." "Why not?" He gave a half laugh, barely audible. "They'll say it's my fault, or send me home without pay. I can't afford that." Before Yarden could respond, a loud voice echoed through the space. "Everyone freeze." Troy stormed in, holding a crushed package in one hand and waving it in the air like evidence in a trial. His walk was fast, his expression exaggerated. "Who packed this garbage? Who?" No one spoke. He spun around. "This is why we're losing contracts. It's not the economy, it's not the hours, it's lazy hands and stupid mistakes." He waved the box again. The corner was dented, but nothing more. "Greg," Troy barked. "Find out who scanned this pallet and write them up. I want it on my desk in 20. Greg, still on the mezzanine, scribbled something without comment. Yarden watched the room. No questions, no investigation, just blame. He returned to his work, but the rest of the morning moved slower. People were quieter. Every movement felt double-checked. Colby passed him once, carrying a heavy load solo, his shirt soaked through. He didn't ask for help. During lunch, Yarden sat with Wren near the loading dock. She was eating a sandwich from a reusable container, her eyes scanning a list on her phone. "You always eat alone?" he asked. "Not always, but no one wants to talk shop on break." "What's your background?" "You seem like you know this place inside out." "I was in logistics for a grocery chain," she said. "Got laid off during restructuring. Took this job to keep a roof over my head. Was supposed to be temporary. But you're still here," she looked up, "because people here would drown without me. Management doesn't care if the roof leaks or if the scanner batteries are dead. I fix what I can, but I'm not in charge, I just patch holes." He nodded slowly. "You ever get offered a lead role?" She laughed once. "Troy said I'm too reactive, not leadership material." Yarden didn't respond. He didn't want to break cover yet. That afternoon, a truck arrived 2 hours early. The driver was irritated, claiming no one had answered his calls and he had a schedule to keep. The dock team scrambled. Yarden helped guide the truck in, but the bay wasn't clear. A full pallet of electronics was blocking the space, and no forklift was available. Every operator was already working overtime. Troy appeared again, shouting orders but not lifting a finger. "Move that pallet, I don't care how. We don't have clearance yet," Wren tried to explain. "That shipment hasn't been scanned, then scan it and move it. Use the damn manual jack." The manual pallet jack was rusted and had a cracked wheel. Colby emerged, wiping his hands on a rag. "I'll do it," he muttered. He hooked the jack under the pallet and started dragging it sideways. The load shifted unevenly and 3 boxes fell off the top. One hit the ground hard, the plastic casing inside cracking on impact. "Great," Troy said. "Another right up." Colby didn't respond, he just kept working. That night, Yarden didn't leave right away. He waited near the time clock, pretending to check his locker. Wyatt walked by, rubbing his shoulder again. Wren passed, mumbling something about an email she needed to send. Then Colby came out, slower than usual. Yarden followed him to the lot. "Colby." The older man turned, surprised. "I saw what you did for Wyatt yesterday," Yarden said. Colby didn't answer. His eyes were unreadable. "You didn't have to. He's a kid," Colby said. "Barely makes rent. He's got a baby girl. I've been there. You helped him." "I didn't do it for thanks." "I know. I just wanted to say it matters." Colby gave a small nod. "You talk different than most guys around here. I've worked in worse places." "That's so? I've seen what happens when no one steps up. You stepped up." Colby looked away, then back. "Don't tell anyone." "I won't." He turned and walked off, the sound of his boots fading into the parking lot. Yarden stayed behind, hands in his pockets, eyes on the warehouse. He'd seen enough to know what needed to change. But he hadn't seen everything yet. Tomorrow, he'd show up even earlier. And he'd ask for the night shift schedule. Word was, different names ran that crew, and if what he'd seen in daylight was this bad, he needed to know what happened when no one was watching. By the time Yarden stepped into Warehouse 7 the next evening, the sun had dipped low behind the industrial park, casting long shadows over the cracked concrete outside. The night crew had already started. The lighting inside was dimmer, more fluorescent hum than daylight buzz. The air hung heavier, and the pace was slower, but not in a good way, more like a team moving through molasses with half the manpower. No sign of Wren or Colby. Different faces, different rhythm. A tall woman with a nose ring and tired eyes handed him a scanner without speaking. Her name tag reads Sophie. She was the only one at the intake station. "You're new?" she finally asked. "Yeah, Dennis, I was on days, just rotating through." She nodded, more out of obligation than interest. "We're 2 people down, again, so just scan and stack, don't wait for instructions. If it doesn't beep, don't touch it." The first few hours passed in a blur of broken pallets, misaligned barcodes, and silence. Communication was minimal. No one explained anything unless asked directly, and even then, answers were clipped. Yarden noticed something quickly. Inventory discrepancies were everywhere. Boxes in the wrong lanes, items marked as shipped that were still on the floor. It was chaos in slow motion. He tried asking a stalker named Juno about a list of mismatched SKUs. "We're not told why." "We just move what they tell us," she said without looking up. "Who's they?" "Greg or whoever's filling in. Sometimes someone named Alton. Doesn't matter, they just want it off the floor." "Even if it's wrong," she shrugged. "Scan it fast enough and no one checks." Around midnight, a forklift clipped a corner shelf. A whole row of plastic canisters crashed down, spilling across the floor. No one screamed. No one rushed over. The driver, a guy with headphones on, just stared, reversed slowly, and drove off without a word. Sophie walked by, saw the mess, and sighed. "I'll log it later." "You're not reporting it now." She pulled out a worn notebook from her back pocket. "They don't check the system anymore. I keep my own record. It's faster." Yarden frowned. "Don't we have a damage log? We used to." Troy said it took too long to file, slowed the metrics. Yarden felt a familiar frustration crawl up his spine. He stayed quiet but started making mental notes. Systems weren't broken, they were being bypassed. On purpose. He stepped outside during the short break, needing air. The lot was empty except for a dented food truck parked under a flickering lamp. A few workers stood nearby, eating in silence. That's when he saw Wyatt again, sitting on the curb, rubbing his shoulder with a grimace. "You're on nights now?" Yarden asked, approaching, double shift. "Needed the hours." "You get your car fixed?" Wyatt looked up, surprised. "Yeah, I got some unexpected help." "Colby," Wyatt hesitated, then nodded. "I didn't ask for it, he just handed me the envelope. Said it was from someone who'd been there before." He ever talk about his past? Not much. Just that he used to load trucks out west, said he learned to keep his eyes open. Yarden sat beside him. "You trust him?" "Yeah, he listens." "That's rare around here." Before Yarden could respond, shouting erupted from inside. He ran in to see a young woman cornered near the packing station. A man in a blue vest was standing over her, voice raised. "You don't get to screw up and walk off. You mislabeled the outbound." "That's on you." "I didn't label that shipment," she said quietly. "I wasn't on that lane. I saw your ID on the scan log. I didn't scan that load, someone used my tag. I told Greg's not here. I'm here, so guess what? That means you're responsible." Yarden stepped in. "Hey. Maybe cool it down a second." The man turned. "Who the hell are you?" "Just someone who knows yelling doesn't fix barcodes." The man stepped closer. "You got a problem with how I manage. What's your name?" "Alton, night supervisor." "Why? You always talk to employees like that. If they screw up, yeah." The young woman backed away, visibly shaken. Alton crossed his arms. "You want to take her shift? Be my guest." Yarden stared at him. "No, I want you to leave the floor right now." Alton laughed. "You think you outrank me?" Yarden pulled out his ID badge from his back pocket, the real one, with his name and title. "I'm Yarden Ames. I own this company." The warehouse fell silent. Alton's face drained of color. He opened his mouth, then closed it. "You're done here," Yarden said, voice low. "Effective immediately. You will not speak to another one of my employees again." Alton's hands shook slightly. "I was just enforcing standards. No, you were abusing your title because no one was watching. Now someone is." Security escorted him out within minutes. Yarden turned to the employee who had been yelled at. "What's your name?" "Camry." "You're not in trouble. I'll personally check the logs. You can finish your shift if you want or take the rest of the night off. Paid." She nodded slowly, still stunned. Sophie approached afterwards, still holding her scanner. "Was that real?" "Yeah," Yarden said. "It was overdue." She looked at him carefully. "There's others like him, not just Alton, people who learned no one's keeping score. I'm about to change that." After the shift, Yarden stayed behind. He pulled inventory logs, shift schedules, and scanned damage reports going back 60 days. The discrepancies weren't small. Thousands in lost inventory, flagged under resolved without signatures. Scans done from inactive accounts, multiple employee IDs reused across different shifts. He made a list. Greg, Troy, Alton, names repeated across every gap. He called his assistant from his truck. "Get me the HR audit files for Warehouse 7, and I want employee turnover records from the last 2 years. Filter by manager. You found something?" "I found everything." Before hanging up, he added one more thing, "and call Ren. Tell her I want her in charge of this facility starting Monday." Monday morning came with cold air and a quiet tension. Warehouse 7 stood like it always had: steel walls, high ceilings, yellow dock doors lined in a row, but inside, everything had shifted. The early shift clocked in at 6. Ren stood at the whiteboard in the break room, dry erase marker in hand, writing out the new rotation schedule. She wore a black zip-up with a small logistics pin on the collar. Her name badge, now updated, read Operations Lead. Yarden stayed off the floor that morning. Not because he was done, but because he'd already done what mattered most. He'd seen it. Not through reports or filtered updates, but with his own eyes. Now it was time to act. At 7:30, he entered with 2 regional HR reps and the company's compliance officer. The 3 of them had flown in over the weekend. None of them had been briefed through middle management. This was direct. They walked straight to the conference room near the loading dock. A folding table had been cleared, and a stack of folders waited in a neat pile, each one containing evidence. Forged signatures, skipped safety audits, unauthorized shift overrides, falsified inventory clearance. Every document was time-stamped and verified. Ren stepped in first. "I've got Troy and Greg waiting in the front office," she said. "Sophie from Nights texted, said Alton tried to come in again, said no one told him he was terminated." "Did she stop him?" Yarden asked. "She told him to leave or she'd call the police." He left. Yarden gave a single nod. "Get Troy in here." Troy entered with shoulders high, as if still clinging to some illusion of authority. He glanced around and started to speak, but Yarden held up a hand. "Sit," Yarden said, voice flat. Troy paused, then pulled out a chair. The compliance officer opened the first folder and slid it across the table. "These are your written logs from the last 60 days. Troy barely looked down. "Yeah, I filled those out. They don't match the system entries." 26 documented discrepancies. In some, you claimed to be on site while security footage shows otherwise. In others, you signed off on safety checks that were never conducted. That's not unusual, Troy said, shrugging. Sometimes things get busy, we do what we can. Yarden leaned forward. Is that what you call it when injured employees are told to keep working or risk losing hours? Or when you override injury reports so they don't trigger review? Troy's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. We also found 4 separate employee complaints submitted through the anonymous system, all flagged as resolved under your login. None actually reviewed. Troy's voice grew defensive. People exaggerate, they're soft. You give them an inch, they take a mile. You don't motivate people by threatening them, Yarden said. You create fear, and fear doesn't move freight. The HR rep took over. Your employment is terminated, effective immediately. You will not return to this facility. Your access has already been revoked. Troy's face turned red. You're throwing away a decade of experience because a few part-timers whined. No, Yarden said quietly. I'm removing someone who stopped doing the job the moment no one was looking. Troy stood slowly, mouth tight, and left without another word. Greg entered a few minutes later. Unlike Troy, he looked nervous. He didn't sit until asked. You've been coordinating night shipments, Yarden began, but you're listed on daytime logs too. Explain that. Greg hesitated. I was told to log extra hours to balance out the labor shortage. Troy said it was fine. Did you work those hours? Some of them. Not all. And who told you to bypass the inventory hold procedures? Greg glanced down. It was just to keep pace. Alton said some shipments were backlogged. I didn't want to be the one slowing things down. So you let shipments be cleared without verification. It wasn't malicious. I thought I was helping. Yarden nodded to the HR rep, who opened another folder. There are 5 separate incidents where mislabeled product was shipped to the wrong client. Total damages near $12,000. You cleared all 5. Greg looked pale. You're not being terminated, Yarden continued. But you're being suspended pending retraining and compliance review. You'll report to Ren upon return. If you fail a single audit, you're out. Greg nodded once. Understood. He left quietly. Yarden stepped out into the warehouse. The floor was active measured, not frantic. A new forklift operator, a temporary from another facility, worked the loading zone with care. Ren met Yarden near the conveyor belt. We've got 2 interviews scheduled today. Referrals from employees, she said. I told them we're not promising anything until they shadow a shift. Good. Let me know if you need to pull from other districts temporarily. Prioritize safety. Ren paused. You're staying involved. I've set up mandatory monthly walkthroughs, not just here, every warehouse. I'll rotate through unannounced. No more layers between me and the floor. Ren gave a small nod. They'll notice. They should. Down the aisle, Wyatt was loading boxes onto a new cart system. His posture was still careful, shoulder movements limited, but he was working steadily. Yarden approached. You feeling any better? Yeah, got it looked at. Clinic said it's just a strain. I'm on lighter duty this week. You didn't report it before. Why now? Wyatt looked at him. Because now I believe someone's actually reading the forms. He picked up the next box and kept moving. Later that afternoon, Yarden met Colby in the break room. The room was quiet, just the hum of the vending machine and the faint sound of tape guns from the next aisle over. Colby was sitting at the corner table, eating from a plain lunch container. Yarden sat across from him. You knew more than most, he said. You saw it all, didn't you? Colby didn't look up. I kept my head down. No, you kept this place standing, quietly. Colby hesitated. I didn't want credit. I just didn't want to watch good people break. Yarden reached into his coat and slid over a sealed envelope. That's not a bonus, that's a contract. Colby raised an eyebrow. You'll be part of the Regional Ethics and Operations Board, 3 days a month. You'll report directly to me. One condition, everything you say unfiltered. Colby stared at the envelope. I'm not a suit. I'm not asking you to be, I'm asking you to be honest, like you've always been. Colby nodded once. All right. Outside, the wind kicked up a cloud of dust in the lot. The sun hung lower now, golden light cutting across the warehouse walls. Inside, the floor kept moving, not perfectly, but cleaner, straighter, with purpose. Yarden walked the perimeter one last time before catching his flight. He didn't say goodbye, he didn't make a speech, but before reaching the exit, he passed Ren near the inventory bay. "You'll need backup," he said. "Don't wait until you're drowning to ask for it." "I won't," she said. "We've got a good start." He looked around once more. The place still smelled like motor oil and cardboard, still echoed with the low rumble of work being done. But now it felt like people mattered, and that made all the difference.